All right, it's Ron Goodall, FightHype.com. I'm here with Steven Espinoza. How's everything going?
I'm good, brother.
There's a lot of questions. I'm sure you've been asked a lot, and I'm just going to speed run.
Okay.
Just going back, first and foremost, Canelo Mungia, big event this weekend. But it couldn't help to talk about the Canelo De La Hoya thing. Just get your thoughts on that, recapping.
Got spicy all of a sudden, didn't it? Look, I've had two thoughts, and I'm not sure which is more accurate. It might be a combination. One, I thought it was interesting, the timing of this. We didn't see a lot of that same energy from Oscar at the kickoff press conference. So the timing of it makes me wonder, is this, calculated effort to, make Canelo angry, to maybe get him distracted, to, ruffle his feathers ahead of the fight? But having said that, whether that is true or not true, once that bridge was crossed, and now I'm mixing metaphors, once that dam was broken, like the floodwaters opened, and clearly both of them had a lot to get off their chest. There was a lot to be said, and just when you thought it was starting to end, it would flare back up. So, clearly I don't think it was all calculated. It might have been a calculated effort to start, but once it got going, there was just a lot of stuff that they both wanted to get off their chest, and clearly they did.
You've had a pissed off Canelo on your network before when the Caleb Plant fight. Do you think that's essentially a bad idea? The De La Hoya is getting Canelo an extra motivation of wanting to kick Mungia's ass?
I don't think so. If you talk to a lot of athletes, boxers and otherwise, a lot of them will sort of, laugh at the idea of sort of bulletin board material, because you don't get to the level that a Canelo is without being a self-motivated guy. And even if you're giving somebody extra motivation on Thursday of fight week, what's he going to do? He's going to go jump rope extra hard on Thursday night or Friday. You're not adding anything at this point. Maybe you don't want to piss him off 8 weeks out, and he's got that in his head and focusing on the training. But at this point, I don't see any downside to pissing somebody off.
Now, a few hours later, after everyone left that wonderful press conference, we ended up checking our phones and seeing that news broke about Ryan Garcia. Just what's your thoughts? There's a B sample. Ryan has to go and kind of clear his name, but just immediately when you've heard that news, what was your first reaction?
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that, because obviously the story's not all written yet with the B sample and otherwise. My first response, I was disappointed for the sport, because there was such a huge upset, such a lot of energy and enthusiasm coming after the fight, such a really enjoyable fight. And to see that dampened by this news, it doesn't take away everything that happened there, and it certainly doesn't take away from Devin's performance. But boxing was, had a lot of momentum, a lot of energy coming out of that. And this, certainly takes some wind out of its sails. So I think it's disappointing for the sport.
With the crazy build-up of that event, and obviously afterwards, we're going through that. Just on a business aspect, I know that you may not know, right? But just how the promotion's been completely built up. Would you just assume outside that was a successful pay-per-view? Do you think it did what it should have been promoted a little bit different? If it was essentially something that you were dealing with?
Look, I think over the years, I think, I see the right way to put this.
Yeah, no, take your time,
Yeah. Over the years, it's starting to recognize the difference between a fight that people talk about a lot versus a fight that people want to buy. So they're not always the same thing. So, people, and we've made this mistake on certain fights. It's sort of like social media is going, absolutely crazy. And usually that does correlate to big pay-per-view, but not always, because there are a lot of times where people are just talking about craziness around a fight. Doesn't mean that necessarily all that craziness is making them want to buy the fight. So that's the real question, is looking in retrospect. There was certainly a lot of activity, a lot of buzz, a lot of discussion, a lot of people talking about it that wouldn't have otherwise been. But did that discussion, did that buzz make people want to buy the fight, or did it make them not want to buy the fight? Because at the end of the day, people wanted to know that it was a competitive fight, that there was risk, that it was going to be a good fight. Look, I can't answer that question. I don't have the pay-per-view numbers. I've heard rumors but I know how much I hated it when people spread rumors around our pay-per-views. I'm not going to contribute to that. So I'm just going to say, look, I don't have a definitive number, but I think that's really the question: is did all that buzz help the fight, or is it just buzz?
I know that people are using that to compare when Tank fought Ryan. Is it safe to assume that it did not as well as Tank versus Ryan?
I'd be shocked if it did what Tank versus Ryan did. And that's nothing against either guy. It's just Tank versus Ryan is one of those cases where 2 + 2 equals a lot more than 4.
Yeah.
And there was just something there. You had, in some people's eyes, you had good guy, bad guy. You had Mexican American fighter. You had a black fighter. You had different geographics parts of the country. You had a lot of different things coming together. So again, I'm not going to get into rumors, but I'm confident that it didn't do anywhere near what Tank versus Ryan did.
Okay. Switching gears, obviously there's conspiracy theorists on Twitter, and I hate to bring Twitter involved, but there's your relationship with Jaron Ennis is a great relationship from then to still now. And so I guess a lot of boxing minds have assumed that wherever Steven goes, Jaron goes. And I'm sure there's many great reasons why Jaron went to Matchroom, and you kind of spoke a little bit about it. Just what's your thoughts on Jaron essentially going to Matchroom and maybe not following the Prime Video path?
Look, we've been part of Boot's career for a long time, and we're proud of the work together, and I'm always going to be behind him and supporting him, regardless of what promoter or platform he's on. We've talked a lot. I've talked to Boots. I've talked to Bozy. I know exactly why he made the choice that he made, and I understand it completely. I don't have any problem with it. Look, I'm not going to get into the details. If he wants to get into it, he will. But it certainly wasn't a personal offense to me. I've been a supporter and a role in his network. I was never really a professional advisor. I think people thought I was managing him or at some point or something. There's this crazy rumor going around. Boots has got one manager, and that's Bozy. And he runs his son's career, and rightly so. Having said that, I've helped him where I could, and proud of the role that the network played, that Showtime played in helping build his career. And I'm going to be rooting for him going forward. I expect to be ringside as his next fight and cheering for him just like, I have been for the last 5 or 6 years.
What's your thoughts on the Turk Ali Sheik coming in, doing obviously a big card, which is kind of a mix and match of like different fighters from different promotions. Do you like the move into LA and America?
I do. I certainly don't want all the big fights going outside the U.S. I don't think that's good for the sport. For that matter, even let's say all of the big fights went to Vegas. I don't think that's good for the sport either. I think it's a great thing that New York City got Ryan versus Devin, and it's a good thing to spread these all around. So happy to see that one of the big Saudi cards is happening outside of Saudi. I think that's a positive thing for the sport.
And I know people have kind of tried to speculate and ask directly, like, we've seen you at the Prime Video press conference for the last one for Fedor, and it was supposed to be Keith Thurman. It's supposed to be Keith Thurman versus Tim Tszyu.
Right.
But just the official, is there like an official role or something? Just clarify for a lot of people
Sure.
who just...
Yeah, there's been a lot of questions about it. So I've been hired by PBC to supervise the TV production. So that means the live TV production and the shoulder programming. I'm sure the people who are watching closely see some similarities between Gloves Off and All Access. There are many differences as well, but there are some similarities. Part of that is because I've been involved in both. Part of it is because some of the team is the same. But essentially, PBC did not have a TV production infrastructure previously because they didn't have to. Fox did the production, Showtime did the production. Way back, HBO did the production on some of it. So, when all that changed, they moved to Prime. With Prime not handling production, PBC had to build the production infrastructure, and they asked me to, help them do that. And that's sort of my role going forward.
And it kind of dispel a lot of rumors, right? Because I think
kill them all.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'm tired of them too. I'm tired of going on Twitter with
and that's kind of where I want to kind of, they made this idea that, because of PBC is taking the role of picking a production team that claim that Amazon doesn't have a budget, right? And I know you hear that means. Is this something similar how like UFC has their own infrastructure of a team to broadcast the event, and basically Amazon's providing the budget, they just don't want to be responsible for it. Like here you guys go, do what you guys need to do.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, and there's a lot of misconceptions there. But if you look at, let's just look at, MLS on Apple, for example. MLS does their own production because, one of the differences in the streamer business is they don't have a production infrastructure, intentionally so. And that's just not sports, that's everywhere else. So if you look at what traditional networks, the way they're structured and where a lot of streamers are, they certainly have executives who manage the production, they have development executives, things like that. But they don't generally have, meaningful big production. They have the production, that's just a philosophical choice in terms of how they run their business. Happens on sports as well. So that's the streamer business. They're not going to hire a bunch of people and have a production infrastructure. So whatever they do up to this point, they'll buy the rights, provide funding, and expect someone else to produce and deliver it to their specifications. So yeah, it's not unique to boxing or PBC. It's pretty much the way all the streamers are working in sports and outside of sports.
So just kind of recap. Showtime essentially had their own team, which essentially did the stuff for the specific network. And in this case, it's like the streaming platform. It's like, hey, we'll take that, but you deliver it to us,
right?
And essentially like that,
right? And if you look at ESPN or Fox, guys who work for Fox on college football, produced some of the boxing when it was there, and they've got a lot of production personnel in house. Same with ESPN; it's got a huge production facility. That's just not the streamer business.
Is there anything significantly different outside of that between the two? Because they're really going to try to pin the idea that, well, it's because they only want to give a little bit of money, or they're trying to, I guess.
Well, look, there are certainly differences, and if you look and go back to Showtime's first year in boxing or to HBO's first year in boxing, it certainly didn't look like what it did 30 years later. So people are saying, well, it's not as frequent as the Showtime, where it's not this or it's not that. Well, yeah, this is the second event, and it's a new business for them. So, people want to rush and make judgments and jump to conclusions after one or two events. Let them get through the first year and then make the judgment on where the commitment to boxing is and how this deal is working out.
My final two questions, there's a lot of people who basically looked at the Tim Tszyu versus Fedor fight and wonder, their opinion of what success is versus what is successful from Amazon. What can you tell us of the success from that event, and why was it a success?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is the experience itself, from the broadcast, making sure you got, it's easy to buy, it's easy to watch, it's good quality, and it's good quality matchmaking. And from that perspective, I don't think anybody had any complaints. Mm-hmm. I mean, top to bottom. You started off the stream, with Carmel Mutan, and that was a fantastic fight. That was as quality as any of the fights that we had on the card. And I give a lot of credit to Cuba as well. Like, it wasn't a one-sided fight. That was a very, very competitive fight. So from that perspective, that's the most important thing. Because, business will continue to grow as long as you're giving people positive experiences. And again, the buy process, the production, look and feel, to the action in the ring, I think it's a home run on all three fronts.
Okay. But in addition, from the back end, right? Mm-hmm. They were very happy and it was very successful outside of the...
Look, it's a long-term business. No one's making a snap decision on one event.
Correct.
But the feedback that PBC heard from Amazon is they were very happy with all aspects, including, commercially.
Which leads to my very last question is, I'm going down the Twitter rabbit hole, but, because of the schedule has looked thin, many people's eyes, and they assume that because the cars have been pay-per-view and only been pay-per-view, is there any, untruth that there's going to be non-pay-per-view primes, or these are just kind of things that you guys are filling out to see what the future holds?
It's walking before running, and there was a press release put out, and that nothing has changed. It was 12 to 14 events the first year, a mix of pay-per-views and non-pay-per-views. So, Until someone tells us that changes, that's the change. And again, like, this is a new business for them. It's not, a league. When you buy into a league, you're full speed ahead from day one. You're getting, 30 games first weekend. That's not how boxing works. As you get more and more comfortable with the infrastructure, with the technology, with the way things are hosted on their platform, the way they're promoted on the platform, the pace of the events will pick up. And again, I counsel people patience. Like, don't make a snap judgment on 1 or 2 events. Let them get through the first year and then make all the judgments you want.
Well, look, I appreciate the time. Saturday, May 4th, you haven't seen the gloves off. Canelo versus Mungia. It's going to be exciting this Saturday. Any last message to the fans?
No, just look, I appreciate the support, and we'll see you on May 4th.
Awesome, thanks.